last couple of years at Brickworld, I've obviously done my Danger Room build with this Sentinel, and you've seen these minifigures in that build. We're going to be mixing things up a little bit. We're going to be getting new versions of these characters into my X-Men MOC for the year. I'm excited to change things up a little bit, like Wolverine with the Brick Arms robot arm to simulate him getting blasted by one of the Sentinels, so his skin is off. And Gambit, obviously he got into combat with a Sentinel. Didn't turn out super great for him for right now, so definitely excited for that as an Easter egg. And back to the Sentinel. I think I'm going to do something fun with this year. I'm going to empty out the chest cavity a bit, get Beast in there to simulate that from the episode, and with the dead Gambit, that is also going to go into the Wild Sentinel, or the Tri-Sentinel, whatever you want to call that, which I have built the head of so far to start out with this video, which is a bit of a complicated build. I'm only going to be using parts that are already in my collection. I'm not going to be buying new parts, so I'm going to get it as good and as close to the actual build as I can, but I'm going to take some creative liberties. Obviously, right now, I feel like if I built the heads like a couple plates outwards more, it would separate them a little bit more and make it more accurate. But for what I have so far, this is looking pretty good. The top of the head is going to use this piece that was from my KO Customs Sentinel set that he gave me, or sold me. So very lucky to have that, honestly, since that is an important part. One of the bummers, though, this is going to be a pretty fragile build, since, again, working with the parts that I have. But let's take a look on the inside. The hardest thing for this, obviously, is having 3 different faces, pretty much equidistant, since Lego is a block system. I ended up making a pretty cool, I would say, build to keep it triangular and 3-sided. Just quick removing these sort of divider panels here, and just be able to slide out the inner area, which is done with the like 1x3 round plate. So I'm glad I have a couple of those laying around, and then the inside is just going to be 3 of those hinge plates, and those just, again, would make a perfect triangle. The neck part that's going to connect to the body eventually isn't going to be like directly in the center, but it's a pretty big monstrosity of a Sentinel, so I don't expect it to be perfect in world anyway. But that is how I did the head so far. Let's get to the body. After getting to the body, I went a little bit more off of my own memory of the build and decided to go with more of an artistic recreation than an exact copy. The head is going to be the most accurate part probably, but the body is just a little too hard to, build based off of the cartoon into real life. Just the shaping and like the way it looks is too hard, especially with just using the parts that I have. It's going to have like the circle part there in the bottom, which was accurate to the show. And I'm probably going to have to use ball joints of some sort to kind of wrap some plates and paneling around that. But I still think it looks kind of interesting. Add kind of like a spine sort of shaping on the back there to give it a little bit more depth and make it less flat. Obviously, scaling wise, it's going to be a little bit smaller than what it should be. And mass-wise, it should be bigger than the Sentinel, but I feel like height-wise, it is going to be pretty comparable, or maybe a little shorter, unfortunately. But maybe I could do some perspective tricks to make it seem like it's further away. But again, I'm just using the parts that I have in my collection already, and that's really my barrier to 100% accuracy right now. But enjoying what I got so far. I'm going to have to finish this, figure out a way to get the legs to support the weight, and build the scenery. Building the torso, it's definitely getting a little bit bigger, a little harder to show all on camera. I did make the weird little bug arms that are on ball joints, kind of loosely attached right now. I might refigure that out, but there's a little bit of posability in those weird top arms. Head's still able to rotate with the wings on. It's a little bit of a close fit. It'll bump every once in a while. The panels there are on ball hinges, so I can adjust those a little bit to do the angle a little bit differently, and then the circle part there is still a little bit visible. Rotating around, I'm really happy with how the wings turned out with the purple pieces I had left over from the Sentinel, and some of the ideas for parts I want to use for a new version of that. I think this looks good though, with the greebling, the shaping, a little bit jagged at the bottom there, and they do flap like a little bit with the head. It bumps a little bit more, but one of the ways to kind of hold the weight of this, since it is a bigger build, is that there is a bracket piece right here, and with that it rests on the brick and supports the weight of the wings, so it isn't just all of the weight being held down all at once. And obviously for this build, just got to figure out some way to do the legs and actually support the weight. And overall, with the finished build here, I am pretty happy with how it turned out. You know, it's not going to be 100% accurate because, again, only had the parts in my inventory already that I was using. Since this was last minute, I didn't design it on the computer or anything this time around. All this was just by hand in the moment, figuring out like parts I had and making it work. I think the wings are probably the best part, and honestly, I don't think I would really change anything about these. If I did do another version other than maybe making them bigger or angling them out a little bit more so they're not just flat against the back. That way they would kind of go over the shoulder a little bit more. I might change up the little nub arms, honestly. It's not super inaccurate to like some of the screenshots you can get from the show, but they just don't have great posability, so that would be kind of the thing I'd change up. For the legs, it was definitely a challenge to figure out a way to make it support the weight, which is why these front ones end up being a little bit on the thick side. You can't really even see the legs in the show, so it's not like it's like super inaccurate. It's not accurate. I feel like the back ones are a little bit, where I got the cone brick there as like spikes at the end. Would have done that on the front side, but I don't think I have the part availability for that. And also the back side has the ratchet joints too, just to account for the extra weight. With the wings, I feel like this would be kind of the heavier half of it. And obviously, there's also the angled ratchet, so you can post the legs around quite a bit, honestly. But for the most part, it's going to be in this one post here. It's pretty large, I guess. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit smaller height-wise than like the normal Sentinel, but it has a lot of extra bulk with the torso and obviously going backwards, so it's pretty big. And like I said, as close to the show as I could get. I feel like I did a pretty good job overall. Here it is with the official Lego Sentinel, which scales a little bit better with it just because this one's a little bit shorter. But as like the focus point of a build, I feel like this is going to be pretty good. When I put in my other Sentinel, unless I do some perspective stuff, it'll look a little bit goofy, but I like the greebling. I feel like I did a pretty good job of adding interesting textures to this, so it's not just like a flat build. Give it some depth and all that. Just kind of ran out of pink though, where I couldn't really mirror things, so it ended up looking the way that it is. But very happy with how this turned out. Let's get to some of the actual scenery. You know, I built some wreckage with Sentinel going through the city, starting with some micro-scaled skyscrapers to give it some sort of perspective. Obviously, with the Sentinel being smaller than it really should be, you know, I had to build these not in minifigure scale. I threw on some helicopters for more action at the top there. This one being a news one since it's a little bit more colorful. And for the next building, I built one that was hit by the Sentinel and tipping over and breaking. This one with another helicopter probably being more military since it's all gray, but up to the interpretation of the viewer. And just to fill in the space a little bit more, just putting some burp, big ugly rock pieces, and just more wreckage, some fire, broken glass all over the place. Another fun detail, I made this head being the Charles Xavier statue that was destroyed in the episode, you know, when it got knocked over by Magneto in whatever way. So basically just built a Lego Oscar looking object since he's bald. Was only using the parts I had in my collection, unfortunately, but I feel like it's shaped pretty well. Obviously, I would like it to be a little smoother, but since it is just wreckage and I have to build the whole thing, and surprisingly it lays pretty flat, which was nice. Obviously, that is not the main focus of the build. The Sentinel front and center with some modification for the last time you saw it in the video. Mainly being Gambit now in the final scene of the episode. Didn't mean to flick it there, but I think that turned out to be a fun little detail and ties together the scene a lot better than my original plan with him being a skeleton that I kind of teased. And we have this whole little scene here, and I think it turned out a lot better than I originally planned, since I planned for it to be joined with more X-Men scenes. I think just doing this one as a standalone build definitely works a lot better. And can forget one more little bit of wreckage to go in the front there and fill out pretty much every space on the base plate with some sort of interesting detail. And then for Gambit, I used the trans clear pink lightsaber blade piece that came with my Gambit from KO Customs, and some of these pink leaf pieces that I just had laying around. I thought those worked pretty well to show his kinetic energy traveling to the Sentinel. And then Gambit's just using some crazy arms to have him holding the bar piece. And I used the, I can't remember the brand. They have a custom face that doesn't have the mask on, so that was perfect. Random Lego ponytail piece. Then the torso is the Indiana Jones white suit from Orbital minifigures from the second Temple of Doom. There we go. I felt that matched him pretty well, and just, again, makes this scene better. Over the process of working on this MOC more, I decided to split it up. My idea was getting too convoluted, it was breaking the continuity of the show, and I thought that would originally be fine, but it just ended up being too big of an idea of what I should actually make. And it kind of gave me a little bit of anxiety where I was just like, I didn't know where to start, and figured I can finish this scene. I knew what I wanted to do for all of this. And really it does kind of feature the just model there more than being a full enclosed MOC like the Danger Room was, but captures an important scene with a fan favorite character, has some cool scenery, which, you know, makes me regret not having more parts to build more actual skyscrapers and having to simulate more of like a non-minifigure scale, but I think it turned out fine, and I was kind of happy with how I sculpted the Charles Xavier statue, with it being kind of abstract. You know, it's not perfect, but I, again, only used parts I had. That's been kind of the whole mode this year with my MOCs. Just the random wreckage throughout this sort of scene, I feel like turned out pretty well. I really enjoyed the tipped over building in the back there, as well as the little helicopters that I made. I thought those turned out fun too. And probably scale pretty well with the Sentinel, maybe a little big technically, but add a little bit more flavor to this. And with that being said, you know, you're gonna have to keep your tabs on the channel to see the next X-Men MOC as I post the video for that, or hopefully you saw it in person at Brickworld even early. If you want to see more X-Men MOCs or Lego X-Men content overall, check out all the content on my channel. If you want to support the channel more, feel free to join as a member. I've been Brick Radio. I'll see you in the next video.